Did you ever think you'd want to switch your career to HR? Well, after this class, you will. Well, probably not, but at least you'll understand what they actually do now beyond onboarding, offboardings, and setting up your direct deposit. Welcome, everyone, if we haven't met yet. My name is Terry, and today in my lab, we are continuing my journey to get an MBA in IT management from Western Governors University. This video series is my opinion on the experience of going through the WGU MBA program as a returning student at almost 40 years of age. I am paying for this degree out of my own pocket, and this series is not sponsored in any way by anyone, but more details about this are available in the first video in the series. This is the fourth video of the series covering the third class, C202 Managing Human Capital, or as I like to call it, How to Be HR. If you want to see the rest of the videos in this series, there's a link in the description down below to a playlist of all the videos in this MBA journey. Now that all the standard disclosure stuff is out of the way, let's talk about C202, How to Be HR. Managing human capital. For this class, I had to unexpectedly take advantage of the biggest benefit of going to Western Governors University. When everyone hears go at your own pace, they assume as fast as you want, which is technically true with WGU, but I actually had to use the other side of that. I finished the project management course at the end of February. Then to start off March, my wife and I got bad news about our dog Chloe, and we had to say goodbye to her. She's an older Coton de Tulier and had some of the standard small dog health issues when they get up there in age or so, and it's been going on for the last year or so, but we knew the end was coming at some point, and that some point was March 2nd. We'll always love and miss you, Chloe. Then to take the boomerang back to the other side of the emotional spectrum, in the second week of March, it was my daughter's birthday. So we spent a lot of family time during those first couple of weeks. After the happy occasion, then I got to boomerang back to the sad side again and assist my parents in transitioning my father from assisted living into a nursing home. The roller coaster of getting older. All of this to say is I didn't even start this class remotely until the end of March. And to take 3 weeks off of school, at least, I didn't actually have to do anything. I didn't have to file any medical or hardship forms. I just gave my mentor a heads up saying, hey, this was going on, and they were fine with it. For me to be in good standings, this HR class was the last class I needed to finish by June, and I passed the final on April 17th. So as long as you can manage your time for both good or bad events, they treat you like an adult and you'll be fine. So thank you, WGU, for making this emotional roller coaster super easy. But the class itself, how much work you have to do is heavily dependent upon how many jobs you've had prior to starting this class. At this point in my job history, I've had 8 different employers if you go all the way back to high school with varying degrees of interaction with HR. On top of that, not to belittle this class, but a large portion of this class is just a vocabulary test. So if you know what words mean in an HR sense, you get a very large head start. But more on this later. According to the course planning test and the pre-assessment, I knew roughly 70 to 80% of the material going into it. In my opinion, this is a double-edged sword. Since I'm not passionate about HR, on one side I was able to move through the material rather quickly. But on the other side, I was nervous for the test because I didn't feel like I actually learned anything. Essentially, since I'm not an HR person who does HR activities all day, I lack the confidence in my apparent common sense vocabulary knowledge. Let me know in the comments if you experience this too. I'm not sure what to call it. It's not quite imposter syndrome, but it kind of feels like that. Moving on into the book. The book is 14 chapters long with 25 sections, give or take, per chapter. The book itself is very unbalanced, where the front half of the book is very heavy with information on a per chapter section basis, and the second half of the book is very light. In that second half, there are some sections that literally only have one paragraph of information in it. It kind of made it feel like the layout was more important than the content. Like there's some arbitrary standard out there where to be able to qualify for an MBA class, it needed to be 14 chapters with 25 sections. I know that's not true, but that's what it felt like. Then, as you work your way through, you'll notice the first 3 to 5 chapters are very heavy with DEI justification. I'm not saying DEI programs are good or bad, but DEI programs have been in the news lately and they have been very politicized. So if you're sensitive towards them either way, this is just a heads up that they're right there, they're right in your face. To be fair, this is an HR class, so HR and DEI go together like peanut butter and jelly.
It's peanut butter jelly time!
I was just more surprised by, in my opinion, the DEI program justifications were specifically overused for every topic in those beginning chapters, where they could have just said something like ethics or point of view or business strategy. Every argument that the book was making was backed up by specifically DEI justifications. A little variety would have made it a little less noticeable and in some cases provided a better argument for what they were trying to get across. Next, most sections have a check your knowledge question or questions somewhere in the middle, which normally that idea can be helpful when you're studying a textbook for an exam. But in this case, in every case, the answer to the question was in the sentence or the second to last sentence before the question. So you didn't actually get your knowledge tested, you just had to look up, which makes it pretty pointless. Along with ineffective check your knowledge questions, every chapter had at least one, if not multiple, case studies. Unfortunately, in my opinion, these case studies didn't really add anything to the information in the chapter or lesson, so I just started skipping them entirely. They were effectively company ABC was successful because they did X, point of the chapter, some metric went up, and that's about it. They didn't go in depth on how they did the thing, any of the difficulties. It was basically big company does big company process, and it worked. Moving on. As I mentioned earlier on, this is just a gigantic vocabulary test. That hasn't changed, but the book itself does have a problem with self-referential definitions. Try to say that one 5 times fast. If you don't know what a self-referential definition is, it's when you use the word you're defining in the definition of the word. Common ones are love is love and stuff like that, which from my viewpoint, if this is an MBA level course, you think they could have at least as good enough definitions as Google. My next danger category, the gender pay gap. This book covers the gender pay gap, which has been disproven for 5 to 10 years now. The book claims that women make 80% of what men do. And the sources for this section are unavailable as well. I probably should have mentioned this earlier. Every page of every section in this book has the sources that the writers cited down at the bottom with dynamic links to show the original version or if it's been updated. This is the only section of the book where the sources are actually marked in there as unavailable. Probably because it was disproven. For the record, I think it's a good thing that men and women are paid the same to do the same job with the same level of experience. Not against that at all. But for the people who I just angered and are already chomping at the bit to leave me a nasty comment, let me explain. The 70 or 80 cents on the dollar numbers came from incorrectly reading job data. I'm not arguing anything that happened in the 40s, 50s, 60s, etc. There's lots of women's rights items there. There's, civil rights issues. There's a lot of stuff going on there. I'm focusing on the last 20 to 50 years of job data. The high 70 to 80% ratio only applied when you looked at job numbers as a whole and did not account for job type. When you account for job type, the high risk, high paying jobs like oil rig worker, high voltage electrician, or the crazy guys who climb up cell phone towers to change light bulbs and have to base jump off of it at the end to get back down are almost 100%, like 99.999999% dominated by men. This is what causes that overall imbalance in the total numbers. When you look at white collar work or low skill blue collar work, it's relatively even. The range I found while prepping for this video was on the low side. The absolute low side for those job categories was women make 99 cents for every dollar a man makes. Your worst case scenario is 1% difference, not 20 or 30%. And that 1% could probably be made up for a number of different accounting or clerical items. Now, when you flip it to the other side of the spectrum, there is many cases in those two categories where women make more than men when you factor in total compensation and employee benefits. All of that to say is this section just needs to be rewritten entirely. If they wanted to go into employment history and what the country had to do to even out that historical pay gap, that would be a great idea. This book actually goes pretty heavy on all the employment laws, but is, now that I think about it, is pretty light on this specific topic. Anyway, but just to put it out there, saying in 2025, every business is paying women 20 to 30% less than men is just factually wrong. And I don't recall any questions on the final exam about it either. Not saying that's what everyone's going to get, but I didn't get tested on it. Maybe this was just filler for me to pick up and complain about to round out their 14 chapter quota. Well, why only have 2 danger categories when you can have 3? The last bias I noticed was their chapter on unions. TLDR, the writers of this book are super pro-union. There was no attempt to compare and contrast union work versus non-union work. It barely separated the differences between private sector unions and public sector unions, and certainly didn't cover any of the downsides of union work or the corruption within public sector unions. At the end of the chapter, the story they wanted to tell was everyone should use or be in a union. From a human resources point of view, you'd think they'd want to explain the differences and maybe highlight the situations where you'd want to use union work and the situations where you wouldn't want to use it. Or, better yet, better idea, in one of their pointless case studies, they could make it less pointless by taking 2 companies in the same industry, one using union work, one that doesn't use union work, and highlight the differences. That would be informative. In my opinion, this is just strictly me here, so point your anger at me when I say this. As a whole, unions in 2025 are probably cause more harm than good and are largely unneeded. In the early nation-forming days, they did help correct a lot of labor items as we as a country were figuring it out and leading the world in this effort. But for the last 30 to 50 years, some, not all, but some, have a high tendency to be corrupt and extort unorthodox benefits out of companies using extortion tactics. From the East Coast dock workers strike to the UPS drivers and the Detroit American automakers, these union agreements are far from fair, and don't even get me started on what education in Minnesota has done over the last 20 to 30 years to tank the public education system in this state. All of that to say is this chapter needs an update and rebalancing as well. Sorry for the detour down gotcha lane there, but it's just a pet peeve of mine when people knowingly push incorrect information for profit or laziness. And some of those items in this book definitely hit this mark here. But anywho, just to recap, it's a gigantic vocabulary test with some employment law history thrown in. The material is also laid out in a way that effectively blocks you from using Speechify or something like that to read the book to you while you're doing something else. There's just too much interactive actions to be able to let it go and then you do something else at the same time. I didn't experience anything I didn't understand where I felt the need that I need to reach out to a course instructor or join a cohort for this class. But if you like that interaction or need it, it is available. Because of my 3-week pause, 4-week pause, whatever it turned out to be, I did get a text message from the course instructor asking if I needed help on the day I had the final scheduled. To be fair, from their point of view, the course was open for 6 to 8 weeks at that point. So just shot back a message saying, yep, taking it later today. We'll see. And obviously I passed. But for the final, be contextually aware of the question. There are some words in HR that have different meanings depending upon how they're being used, and both meanings may be possible answers on a question. For example, the term behavior can mean controlling emotions at work or a social event, or it can also mean when training becomes the practice actions in job tasks when you're talking about training and development programs. In the flashcards, they put both answers as options, and you got to pay attention to which question they're asking. You can't just keyword jump. Speaking of flashcards, I found the flashcard sections of each chapter really useful for the day before and the day of leading up to the final exam. I kept flipping through the flashcards for the chapters that were my weakest based off of the pre-assessment, and it worked to reinforce the information for the final exam. Well, that's it for WGU's C202 How to Be HR. Managing Human Capital. class. Hopefully this video helps you prepare for the class or gives you a better understanding of what to expect when starting an MBA at WGU. All the links to my study aids are down in the description, and a full explanation on how I'm using each one is in the first 2 videos of this series. If you found this video entertaining or useful, please give it a thumbs up to tell YouTube to show it to more people. Lastly, if you want to join me on this journey, click that subscribe button and notification bell so you are notified the next time I finish a course. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to leave them down below or DM me on Instagram, TikTok, or X at TDSheridan Lab. Until next time, bye now.